With all the speculation out there about the legitimacy of the mail-in voting ballots in several states across our country, I wanted to hear from yet another legislator whose state has been changing the rules just weeks before the election. Congressman Dan Bishop represents North Carolina's 9th District. He joins me now to discuss more on that. Welcome to Real America, Congressman. How are you?
Thank you, Dan. I'm doing well. Thanks for the opportunity to join you.
It's the Dan Squared Show, Dan and Dan. Let's talk about what's going on. I know that your folks, when they were talking with my folks here, our producers, one of the main things you want to talk about was voting, and I totally agree. The world is wrapped up right now in our country, watching all the violence and our country tear each other apart. But we have an election now just, 41 days away. And there's a lot of questions out there about these mail-in ballots. And I heard my counterpart over at, I hate saying it, CNN, I won't say which one, last night, saying absentee ballots. He kept repeating absentee ballots are totally legitimate. Mr. President, stop saying they're not. Let's break it down for folks, Congressman, and tell them the difference between absentee, which veterans, the president's going to use, and these just thousands of mail-out blank ballots that are going out. Describe that for folks so they know the difference.
Well, you're right, Dan, and the president's made that very clear, and his distinction has always made enormous sense, more common sense, even though media has done a lot to distort it and to denigrate it. But the idea is, if you're a voter and you feel uncomfortable going to the polls and you can have no excuse absentee voting in your state like we do in North Carolina, they send a request in to the elections board. They get their ballot sent to them. They mark their ballot. They get a witness. They seal the envelope. They put it in the mail, and they get it back to the elections board. That's a safe process if it's not distorted, and we'll talk about that maybe in a minute. But the other idea, this wild idea that's never been done broadly in the United States, several states have systems that are developed and they do it, but they send out a ballot to everybody in the registration list. Registration lists are not accurate, and they don't. They have a lot of people on them who are not current voters, and you just end up with an enormous risk for fraud if you go that route.
Yeah, and all you hear from the folks in the left mainstream media and the Democrats is that the president is lying about this, that it is foolproof, that there are, I believe, 5 or 6 major states that have been doing the absentee ballots for decades. Yes, that is true, but as you just said, and I want to point out some key words that you said, they have to request it, they get it, and then it's sent to them with their name on it, and then they have to have a witness, right, sign it with them, and then they mail it back. These are just empty ballots, nobody's name's on it. If they think there's 5 people in the household or 10 or whatever, they send 10, 12, 15 to that address. You fill them out and send them back in. Correct?
Right. I mean, or as the Attorney General pointed out in an interview, you could have an apartment where you have 6 generations of occupants who are still on the voter rolls from that time. 6 ballots go there. None of those people are there. Maybe they all get sent in. That's the problem the president's talked about. He's also said, even if you send in an absentee mail-in ballot, go and check or use the systems that are available to you to check that the vote got recorded. That's an enormously common sense thing to do. And media outlets all over the country have lied and said that the president has encouraged people to vote twice. He never did any such thing.
Well, yeah, Dan, and now today all they're saying, Dan, is that he will not adhere to a peaceful transition of power, which he didn't say yesterday. I was watching the press conference, and then we heard from Kayleigh, the press secretary today, even reaffirming what he said. And he said as long as the election's legitimate and it can be proved with facts that it's legitimate, of course he will leave office if he loses. But if there is question, doubt, and fact of tampering with these ballots and something illegal going on, even in one state with one vote, then why would you say I'm leaving peacefully? I would want to sue and take it to the high court and get a result, like we did in 2000 with the hanging Chad issue in Florida. It came down to what? 1 county and a couple votes. They were counted for Bush, went to the Supreme Court, Bush won. That sounds pretty fair and legit to me.
That's right, Dan, and it's another manipulation by those. They don't ask Joe Biden that question. It's just an absurd question, and his answer is appropriate because we do need to see what develops. Can I tell you one more thing about what just happened in North Carolina day before yesterday?
Of course.
The Democrat governor, the Democrat attorney general entered into a collusive settlement agreement of litigation with Democrat plaintiffs and they blew up our system in North Carolina, our election laws that prohibit ballot harvesting of absentee ballots, prevent people from go out and take your ballots from maybe the elderly lady who gets her asked for that absentee ballot, is going to mark it, or maybe they use some undue influence and then they take the ballot from her. That's unlawful in North Carolina. But those officials have agreed with their Democrat plaintiffs in litigation to surrender that law, to undo it. And so that's the kind of mischief that Democrats are engaged in, litigation in Pennsylvania and Michigan, all over the country, and they've just done it in North Carolina. We're going to be fighting that now between now and the election day. So the president's right to say, let's wait and see what's coming up.
Dan, I hear this stuff every day from you guys, and I get so frustrated, like I think most Americans are. This is driving me crazy. I heard what Pennsylvania did already, changing their election laws just last week to allow the, not absentee, but these mail-out ballots to come in right up until the night of the election. That's, oof. Now you're telling me your state, so here's the deal, folks. You heard what he said. So typically you got to get that witness and you got to mail it back in personally, which would keep you from going to a crowded polling booth so you don't get COVID, right? Because that's the left's narrative. You can't vote in person because you might get COVID. But now they can send a person out to you to take it, but that's not possibly spreading COVID. Who's going to go out and pick them up? That opens it up for fraud. Dan,
sure,
we have to stop this from happening. How do we as the American populous citizens who are hearing this nonsense is going on in major states where electoral votes are going to matter, and we'll figure out who the next president is from states like Ohio, Florida, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Those 5 are going to decide. Let's be real. How the heck do we make sure this vote isn't corrupt? You got about 30 seconds.
Well, you're right, Dan. That's the problem. And we've got to, there's going to be a course of litigation. The Trump campaign's involved. The state legislative leadership is working on it. But we're going to have to fight these guys in court to keep them from from throwing the election process into chaos by opening up these anonymous boxes where people can drop in ballots. In our case, they're going to let ballots come in not until just 3 days after the election, but up to 9 days, and they can find the votes they need to reverse results that they don't like. It's just this is the kind of stuff we're dealing with, Dan. So the president's right to say, well, let's wait and see what happens. He's exactly right.
Yeah, this is insane. This is like you're playing a football game, and at halftime, somebody says, whoa, we're changing the rule. Now, if we kick the field goal, it's worth 10 points, but only for our team. Wow. We need more time to talk about this, but they're wrapping me up. Congressman Dan Bishop, 9th District in North Carolina. Keep up the good fight. Let's make sure that everyone's vote counts once, but that it definitely counts. We appreciate you coming on Real America. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for your service. All right, coming up here on Real America, he's an original member of Trump's 2016 transitional team and now sits on the board of the Trump Diversity Coalition. Pastor Darrell Scott will join us. Don't go away.